The United States of America, that self-proclaimed beacon of liberty, that supposed citadel of free expression, that nation whose very founding document enshrines the right to speak one's mind without fear of government retribution, has just revealed itself to be something rather less noble. The Trump administration has revoked the visas of 6 foreign nationals for the unpardonable crime of expressing unflattering opinions about Charlie Kirk following his assassination. Not for plotting violence, not for committing crimes, not for violating any law whatsoever, but for speech, for words, for thoughts committed to social media that displease the thin-skinned autocrats currently occupying the State Department. Let us be absolutely clear about what has transpired here. The government of the United States, through Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his enthusiastic subordinate Christopher Landau, has established a program of systematic surveillance and punishment for foreign nationals who dare to criticize American political figures in terms the administration finds distasteful. They have instructed consular officials to monitor social media. They have encouraged citizens to report offensive comments. They have created in effect a digital Stasi for the purpose of policing opinion about Charlie Kirk, of all people, a conservative provocateur whose entire career was built on deliberately inflammatory rhetoric designed to outrage his opponents. The State Department proudly announced these revocations on social media, complete with examples of the offending statements. An Argentine national said Kirk devoted his entire life spreading racist, xenophobic, misogynistic rhetoric and deserves to burn in hell. A South African national mocked Americans for treating Kirk as a martyr, calling him a tool for white nationalist trailer trash. A Paraguayan national called Kirk a son of a bitch, who died by his own rules, presumably a reference to America's gun culture, which Kirk championed right up until it killed him. These are harsh words, certainly, indelicate, perhaps even cruel, but they are opinions, they are political speech, and the American government has now decreed that expressing such opinions is grounds for banishment from the United States. The constitutional obscenity of this policy should be obvious to anyone who has retained even a passing familiarity with the First Amendment. As Harold Hongju Ko, former legal advisor to the State Department under Obama, correctly notes, this is a blatant First Amendment violation. The Supreme Court has been clear, pellucidly, unambiguously clear, that non-citizens within the United States possess First Amendment rights. The standards being applied here are, as Ko observes, incredibly vague. Who decides what constitutes celebrating an assassination versus legitimate political critique? What metrics are being used? Who makes these determinations? The answer, apparently, is whatever Trump administration official happens to be scrolling through social media on any given day, flagging posts that offend their sensibilities. Consider the Orwellian apparatus that has been constructed here. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau publicly solicited reports from social media users, asking them to send him posts by foreigners that he found objectionable. Think about that for a moment. A senior State Department official is actively encouraging Americans to inform on foreign nationals for thought crimes. He told the public to bring such comments by foreigners to my attention so that the State Department can protect the American people, as if Americans require protection from the opinions of a Paraguayan on Twitter, expressing relief that a man who spent his career promoting xenophobia is no longer promoting xenophobia. The administration's justification for this program is as philosophically bankrupt as it is constitutionally dubious. The United States has no obligation to host foreigners who wish death on Americans, the State Department proclaimed. This is technically true. The United States has broad discretion over who receives visas, but this misses the point so spectacularly that one must assume the evasion is deliberate. The question is not whether America has an obligation to grant visas. The question is whether America should use its visa system as a tool for punishing political speech. The question is whether a nation that has spent 2.5 centuries lecturing the world about freedom of expression should deploy the apparatus of immigration control to silence criticism of its political figures. And what criticism we're talking about here? These 6 individuals did not threaten Kirk. They did not encourage his assassination. They did not celebrate violence for its own sake. They expressed relief, satisfaction, or grim irony that a man who dedicated his career to stoking division, promoting bigotry, and championing the very gun culture that ultimately killed him had become a casualty of the forces he helped unleash. This is political commentary, Caustic political commentary, to be sure, but political commentary nonetheless. The South African who noted that Kirk was used to astroturf a movement of white nationalist trailer trash was making an argument about Kirk's political project, an argument with which one may disagree, but which is manifestly a matter of political debate rather than incitement to violence. The absurdity deepens when one considers the timing. The State Department announced these visa revocations on what would have been Kirk's birthday, the same day Trump posthumously awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, now bestowed upon a man whose primary accomplishment was convincing college students that racism and xenophobia were intellectually defensible positions. The symbolism could not be more grotesque. On the day America elevates Kirk to the pantheon of national heroes, it simultaneously punishes those who dare to suggest he was anything less than a saint. The state sanctions certain opinions about Kirk, reverence, mourning, hagiography, while criminalizing others through the immigration system. This is not an isolated incident. The Trump administration has been systematically weaponizing visa policy to punish speech it dislikes. It expelled South Africa's ambassador for comments critical of Trump. It revoked Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's visa to attend the UN General Assembly. It yanked visas for British punk rap duo Bob Vylan. It has announced it is reviewing the status of more than 55 million current US visa holders for potential violations of its speech standards. 55 million people subjected to retroactive content moderation by a government that claims to champion free expression. The scope of the surveillance required for such an undertaking is staggering. How many State Department employees are currently scrolling through social media looking for foreigners who have said unkind things about Trump or his martyred propagandist? The legal challenges have begun, predictably. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression is suing the Trump administration, arguing correctly that the government cannot defend American culture by eroding the very cornerstone of what America supposedly stands for. They note accurately that the Supreme Court has been clear about non-citizens' First Amendment rights, but the administration proceeds undeterred, confident that its base will applaud the punishment of foreigners who speak ill of their heroes, and that by the time courts rule against them, the damage will be done and the message will be sent. Criticize us at your peril. What makes this particularly galling is the sheer hypocrisy of it all. This is the same administration that never tires of proclaiming America's commitment to free speech. The same administration that denounces cancel culture and woke censorship. The same administration that claims to be defending Western civilization and its values. Yet when confronted with speech it dislikes, speech criticizing one of its own, it deploys the full force of government power to silence and punish. This is not free speech advocacy, this is its opposite. This is using state power to enforce ideological conformity, to punish dissent, to ensure that only approved opinions about approved figures can be expressed without consequence. And let us not forget who is being protected here. Charlie Kirk was not some innocent martyr struck down for promoting peace and brotherhood. He built his career on inflammatory rhetoric designed to provoke and divide. He promoted conspiracy theories. He championed Trump's election lies. He attacked immigrants, minorities, LGBTQ individuals, and anyone who deviated from his narrow vision of American identity. He celebrated the gun culture that ultimately killed him. He was, to borrow the South African's phrase, used to astroturf a movement of white nationalist sentiment among American youth. One need not celebrate his death to observe that his career was spent promoting ideas that many find repugnant, and to note the bitter irony that he was killed by the very culture of violence and unrestricted gun access he championed. But in Trump's America, such observations are apparently grounds for expulsion. The government has decided that Charlie Kirk is beyond criticism, at least by foreigners who wish to visit America. They have erected a protected class of political figures whom one may not disparage without risking one's visa. Today it is Kirk. Tomorrow it will be Trump himself. Indeed, the administration has already expelled diplomats for criticizing Trump. Where does this end? Will every visiting professor, every exchange student, every tourist need to scrub their social media of any posts critical of American political figures, lest they be denied entry? Will America become a nation where foreigners must demonstrate ideological purity before being permitted to cross its borders? This is the death of American exceptionalism in real time. For decades, America has positioned itself as the global champion of free expression, lecturing authoritarian regimes about the importance of tolerating dissent and protecting speech. American diplomats have denounced countries that punish citizens for criticizing their leaders. American presidents have held up the First Amendment as evidence of American superiority. And now America is doing precisely what it has condemned others for doing, using government power to punish speech that offends those in power. The comparison to authoritarian regimes is not hyperbolic. China punishes speech critical of its leaders. Russia expels foreigners who speak against Putin. Saudi Arabia denies visas to those who criticize the kingdom. And now America joins this illustrious company, revoking visas for social media posts that displease the Trump administration. The only difference is that American officials have the audacity to proclaim they are defending American values, while trampling on the very freedoms that supposedly define those values. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression puts it correctly. You can't defend our culture by eroding the very cornerstone of what America stands for, freedom of speech and thought. This is the fundamental contradiction at the heart of the Trump administration's policy. They claim to be protecting American culture, but American culture, at least the American culture we have long claimed to represent, is defined by the principle that government may not punish people for expressing opinions, no matter how offensive those opinions may be. By weaponizing visa policy against speech, the administration is not defending American values. It is destroying them. And for what? For Charlie Kirk's honor? For Trump's ego? Because Marco Rubio and Christopher Landau cannot abide foreigners saying unkind things about their political allies. The pettiness of it is almost as offensive as the constitutional violation. These are not serious people protecting serious interests. These are insecure authoritarians who cannot tolerate criticism and who will abuse whatever power they possess to silence those who displease them. The tragedy is that this was preventable. America could have chosen to live up to its stated values. It could have demonstrated that free speech means protecting even speech we find offensive. It could have shown the world that criticism of political figures, even harsh, even caustic criticism, is the price of living in a free society. Instead, it has chosen pettiness, vindictiveness, and authoritarian control. It has chosen to punish foreigners for opinions, to deploy government surveillance of social media, to use visa policy as a tool of ideological enforcement. America has chosen, in short, to become precisely the kind of country it once condemned. That is the real tragedy here, not that 6 people lost their visas, but that America has lost its claim to stand for anything better than the autocracies it claims to oppose. The First Amendment, it turns out, is not a universal principle, but a privilege extended only to those who say things the government approves of.